I thought he was braver, but it turned out he wasn't ready. I never thought a simple TV show could change the way I looked at someone. But that night, when my neighbor leaned against her doorway with a cup of tea and told me, "If you don't finish the series with me, don't bother coming over tomorrow," I froze. It wasn't just the words. It was the way she said them. Half a joke, half a challenge. And something in her eyes made me feel like she wasn't talking about the show at all. I should explain. My name's Evan Carter. I'm 38. And to be honest, life hasn't turned out the way I expected. I've been divorced for 3 years, no kids. My work, managing a logistics office, is steady, but it's not what I'd call inspiring. Most days, I go through the motions, come home to my quiet place, heat up leftovers and tell myself it's enough. But at night when the house is too quiet, I know it isn't. She moved in a year ago. Sophie Turner, 37, smart, a bit mysterious, the kind of woman who doesn't have to try to turn heads. She just does. A brunette with sharp eyes that always seem to be measuring you. But then she smiles and suddenly the whole room feels warmer. We were friendly neighbors, nothing more. A hello on the stairs. A quick laugh when the mail got mixed up. I never imagined she'd knock on my door one evening holding 2 mugs of tea like it was the most natural thing in the world. That night, the rain was tapping against the windows. I just come back from work, ready to collapse, when I heard her voice in the hallway. "Evan Carter, you're coming with me," she said. And before I could answer, she pressed a steaming mug into my hand. "We're watching something." Inside her living room, the lights were low and the big flat screen lit up the space with soft colors. She curled up on the couch, leaving me the other end. At first, I thought it was a casual neighborly thing, nothing more. But then she gave me that line, "If you don't finish this with me, don't come back tomorrow." It hit harder than it should have. I wasn't sure whether to laugh, take it as a joke, or ask her what she really meant. So, I just sat there sipping tea that was too hot, staring at the opening credits on the screen. My mind was racing in circles. Why me? Why now? She didn't make it easier. During the first episode, she kept glancing at me, her expression playful, like she was testing me. When the characters argued, she whispered her own comments, leaning closer than she needed to. I could smell her perfume, something light, not overwhelming, but enough to make me aware of every breath. Halfway through, I realized my shoulders had relaxed, and I wasn't thinking about work or my empty apartment, or how long it had been since I'd let someone get this close. I was just there next to her, and it felt strangely right. When the credits rolled, she didn't move. She just looked at me waiting. I knew she wanted an answer, not about the show, but about whether I'd come back tomorrow, whether I was willing to cross that line from being the quiet neighbor to being something more. I swallowed hard and nodded. "All right, tomorrow?" I said, trying to sound casual, though my heart was pounding. She smiled, satisfied, and reached for the remote like it was settled. As I walked back to my place later, the hallway seemed different, alive somehow, and I couldn't stop hearing her voice in my head, that teasing challenge. "Don't come back if you don't finish this with me." The truth is, I wasn't afraid of missing a show. I was afraid of what would happen if I actually showed up again. The next evening, I found myself standing at her door again, like I'd been summoned. I told myself it was just about the show, that I didn't want to break my word. But the truth was, I wanted to see her. I wanted to know if last night had meant what I thought it did, or if it was just my imagination. Sophie Turner opened the door before I could even knock. She was barefoot, wearing the same blue blouse as yesterday, as if she hadn't bothered to change for me. Or maybe because she knew it already worked. She smiled when she saw me, like she'd been expecting me all along. "You're late," she teased, though I was right on time. Inside the couch was already set, 2 mugs on the table, a bowl of popcorn in between. She picked up the remote and said with mock seriousness, "If you leave halfway tonight, I'm filing a complaint." I laughed, but part of me wondered if she was still half serious. The second episode began, and it was easier this time. I wasn't as tense, though. Every time she shifted closer, my pulse reminded me I was far from calm. At one point, she leaned her head back against the couch, eyes on the screen, and whispered, I like when the characters surprise me, don't you? I couldn't tell if she meant the show or us. Half an hour later, a knock rattled her door. Sophie Turner sighed, hit pause, and opened it to reveal Henry Brooks, our neighbor from downstairs. He was in his 70s, gray hair sticking out under a baseball cap, holding a bag of groceries. "Evening, kids," he said with a grin. "Don't mind me. Just needed to borrow some sugar. Or maybe crash your watch party." Sophie Turner rolled her eyes. "Henry Brooks, you don't even like TV." "Doesn't matter," he said, stepping inside like he owned the place. "I just like to see young people in love." He winked at me and I nearly choked on the popcorn. Sophie Turner shot him a glare, but there was no real anger in it. "Sugar's in the kitchen," she said firmly, pointing the way when he finally shuffled off, muttering about how we looked cute together. Sophie Turner shook her head and muttered, "He lives for drama more than the shows do," but I caught the faint smile she couldn't hide. Just when I thought the interruptions were over, my phone buzzed. A text from Liam Hayes, my colleague. "Where are you, man?" "We're grabbing drinks." I ignored it, but a minute later he called. I stepped into the hall to answer, trying to keep my voice low. "You disappeared," he said. "What's up?" "Secret date." "Just watching something with a neighbor," I muttered. There was a pause, then a laugh. "You mean her? Don't tell me you're falling for that. She's just bored." Evan Carter, women like that pretty confident. They don't settle for guys like us. Careful or you'll end up the punchline. His words hit harder than I wanted to admit. I told him I had to go and hung up, but the echo of his voice followed me back into the living room. Sophie Turner looked up when I returned. "Everything all right?" "Work friend," I said quickly. "Nothing important." She studied me for a moment as if she could see the storm going on inside my head. But she didn't press. Instead, she hit play and soon the sound of the show filled the silence. By the time the credits rolled, she was leaning lightly against my shoulder. I froze, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. It felt so natural yet so dangerous at the same time. When she finally sat up, she caught my eyes and said softly, "See, it's better with company." I nodded, though I couldn't shake Liam Hayes' voice from my mind. Walking back to my apartment that night, Henry Brooks was waiting in the hallway with his groceries. "Careful, kid," he said, though his grin betrayed the warning. "You're either going to find yourself the happiest man in this building or the most confused." I laughed awkwardly, but when I closed my door, I leaned against it and exhaled. He was right, and I wasn't sure which way it would go. Liam Hayes wouldn't let it go. The next day at work, he leaned against my desk with that smug grin of his and said, "So, you're really spending nights with her? You know what people are saying, right? That she's just stringing you along. Be careful, Evan Carter. You're not built for her league." I wanted to tell him to shut up, but instead I buried myself in spreadsheets. Still, the words stuck like splinters. That Friday, Liam Hayes organized a small get-together at his apartment. "Come by," he said. "Bring your neighbor if you dare." I should have said no, but Sophie Turner surprised me when I mentioned it. "Why not?" she said. "We can't hide forever. Besides, it's just a party." When we walked in, heads turned. Sophie Turner in her blue blouse, hair loose, silver pendant catching the light. She made the whole room pause. Liam Hayes noticed, of course. He swooped over with drinks, his smile just a little too wide. "Glad you came," he said, handing her a glass before I could. The night went on with small talk and laughter, but I saw the way he hovered around her, asking questions, leaning in too close. Sophie Turner stayed polite, even laughed at one of his jokes, but my chest tightened every time. At one point, Liam Hayes cranked up the music and suggested a game cards with dares for the losers. People cheered. I felt a knot in my stomach. I knew this was his arena, his chance to make me look small. When Sophie Turner lost a round, he leaned forward, eyes glinting. "Your dare," he said, "is to tell the group who you'd most like to watch a show with." The room went quiet, all eyes on her. My throat went dry. She glanced around, then let her gaze settle on me. "That's easy," she said calmly. "Evan Carter." The group burst into laughter and whistles. Liam Hayes' smile froze, then thinned. I felt heat rise in my face, but not from embarrassment, from something sharper, something like pride. Still, the night dragged on, and I knew he wouldn't quit. When most guests had drifted toward the kitchen, Liam Hayes cornered me on the balcony. "Enjoy it while it lasts," he said under his breath. "She's just passing time. Women like her don't stay with men like you." I clenched my fists, but before I could answer, the sliding door opened. Sophie Turner stepped out, her eyes flicking between us. She didn't ask questions. She simply looped her arm through mine and said, "I'm ready to go." The walk back to our building was quiet. I kept replaying his words, my doubts gnawing. Finally, she spoke. "Don't let him get to you." I tried to laugh it off. "He's just Liam Hayes." She stopped on the sidewalk, looked straight at me. "No, he's jealous, and you need to decide whether you'll let people like him tell you what you deserve." For a moment, everything around us faded. The hum of traffic, the glow of street lights. It was just her, serious and steady, waiting for me to believe her. Back in her apartment, we picked up where we'd left off in the show, but I barely heard the dialogue. All I could think about was the way she chose me in front of everyone without hesitation. And yet, when I closed my eyes that night, Liam Hayes' voice was still there, whispering that it wouldn't last. After the party, something shifted inside me. I should have felt reassured when Sophie Turner chose me in front of everyone. But instead, her words only made the doubts louder. What if Liam Hayes was right? What if she was only passing time and I was just convenient? The next few days, I kept my distance. I told myself I was busy at work, that I needed to catch up on things at home. But the truth was simpler. I was scared. Scared of falling too far too fast. Scared of being left again, like with my marriage. Every evening, I walked past her door, slowing down for half a second before unlocking my own. I'd hear the faint sound of the TV through the wall and picture her sitting there alone, waiting. Then I'd turn up my own radio to drown it out. On the third night, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, I found Henry Brooks, the old neighbor, holding a paper bag of groceries. He didn't waste time. "What are you doing, kid? You think women like her come around twice?" I tried to laugh it off, but he wasn't smiling. "I see her," he continued. "She's not watching the TV. She's waiting for you, and you're hiding in here." "What?" "To feel safe." "Life isn't safe, Evan Carter. It's short, too short to waste on fear." His words stuck with me long after he left. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every smile, every glance Sophie Turner had given me. I wanted to believe it was real, but the louder part of me whispered that stepping closer would only end in pain. The next evening, the decision was taken out of my hands. A firm knock echoed through my apartment. When I opened the door, Sophie Turner was standing there. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't holding tea or popcorn. "Why are you avoiding me?" she asked. No preamble, no jokes, just straight to the point. "I'm not," I said, though my voice cracked. Her eyes narrowed. "Don't lie to me. You disappear for days. And when I see you in the hall, you can't even look at me. If this was only about a show, fine. But it isn't, and you know it." I swallowed hard. "Sophie Turner, I know." She cut me off. "I need to know where we stand. You can't hover at the edge forever. Either you're here with me or you're not. If you can't sit down and finish a story with me, how can you be part of something real?" Her voice trembled at the last word. And for the first time, I saw the fear behind her confidence. She wasn't just challenging me. She was risking something, too. I stood frozen, heart pounding. 1,000 words jammed in my throat. Part of me wanted to reach for her, to promise I'd stop running. Another part wanted to retreat, to keep my walls up. The silence stretched until she finally stepped back. "I won't beg," she said quietly. "But I won't play games either. Think about what you want, Evan Carter, because I already know what I want." She turned and walked down the hall, leaving me in the doorway with my hands shaking. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept hearing her voice, steady and final. "Either you're here with me or you're not," and I knew I couldn't avoid the answer much longer. The night after Sophie Turner's ultimatum, I couldn't sit still. I paced my apartment, staring at the walls, hearing her words over and over. Either you're here with me or you're not. She had stripped everything down to its core. No more jokes. No more hiding behind the excuse of a television show. By morning, I knew I couldn't keep running. The thought of never hearing her laugh again, of walking past her door like she was a stranger, it made my chest ache. Fear or no fear, I wasn't ready to let her go. That evening, I stood outside her door, hands clammy, heart hammering like I was a teenager again. I almost turned back, but then I knocked. She opened the door slowly. Her face was unreadable, calm, but guarded. "Evan Carter," she said, like she wasn't sure what I wanted. I held her gaze. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I was scared, but I don't want to be anymore." For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, she stepped aside and let me in. The living room was the same as always. The sofa, the soft glow of the lamp, the TV paused at the spot we'd left off, but the air felt heavier waiting. We sat down side by side, neither of us speaking. Finally, she picked up the remote, but instead of hitting play, she set it back on the table. She turned to me. "The show doesn't matter," she said. "I invited you because I didn't want to sit here alone anymore." I thought, maybe you didn't either. Her voice was steady, but her eyes glistened. And in that moment, the wall I'd been hiding behind crumbled. I reached out, took her hand. It was warm, trembling slightly. "You're right," I said. "I don't want to be alone. Not if I can be here with you." She let out a breath, half a laugh, half a sob, and leaned her forehead against mine. The tension that had been building for weeks melted away in that quiet moment. We didn't need grand gestures, just honesty. Later, as the credits of the season finale rolled, I realized I hadn't followed half the plot. My mind had been on the way. Her head rested lightly against my shoulder. On the way, her hand never left mine. When the screen went dark, she looked at me with a teasing smile. "Well, we finished it. Does that mean you'll keep coming back?" I squeezed her hand. Finishing wasn't the point. It never was. Her smile softened and she leaned into me again. Outside the city buzzed on, indifferent. But in that small room, it felt like something new had begun. As I walked back to my apartment later, I realized the strange truth. The show had just been a pretext. What she really wanted was for me to stop living in fear, to sit beside her, and take the risk of being close. And what I wanted was exactly the same. That night, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like life was something I was enduring.